This is Capitol Connection.
Welcome to Capitol Connection. I'm Alex Whitney. This Sunday, we're recapping what's going on in Illinois politics and more. Coming up this week on Capitol Connection, a state lawmaker facing federal indictment is now being investigated by her peers. We learn more about the committee taking a closer look at Representative Carol Ammons. And energy prices continue to be a top concern for many families, but new programs being signed into law are promising to cut costs of Illinois' most vulnerable families. And finally, another man killed by ICE agents has Illinois representatives calling for change. We look at what's been happening in Maine and what changes are being asked of the embattled federal agency. But we start this morning on the latest happening here in the Capitol in Springfield. The stage has been set for an in-house investigation into State Representative Carol Ammons. Earlier this month, we told you about her being indicted on federal charges. Now, 6 of her peers in the State House will be taking a closer look at her work in Springfield. In politics, things can change pretty quickly. Just a little over a week ago, Champaign Rep. Carol Ammons was indicted on federal charges of wire fraud and obstruction of justice. When asked about it, Speaker Chris Welch said he would look into her budget items, but wouldn't start his own investigation.
She's entitled to due process, and I believe the court system is the proper place for that to happen. However, we have processes in place that if they are invoked, we will use those processes.
Just a few days later, House Republicans forced Welch's hand when they filed their own petition to form a special committee to look into Representative Ammons. That committee is equally split with 3 Democrats and 3 Republicans. Chicago Representatives Curtis Tarver, Lillian Jimenez, and Swansea Rep. Jay Hoffman will represent the Democrats, while Peoria Representative Ryan Spain will join Dietrich Representative Adam Niemerg and Chicago Representative Dan Ugaste for the Republicans.
I think we've had 6 or 7 folks in my 5 terms that have been indicted under the dome, and it just cannot continue.
While McCombie is happy the committee is formed, she says it's important that its work moves quickly. She points to the speed with which Welch responded to the indictment of Democrat Luis Arroyo in 2019, and she hopes he keeps that same urgency with Ammons.
This is different, and I don't know what makes Carol Ammons special compared to him, but certainly it's not the same, and it should be. When he's sitting there talking about due process and court proceedings, it should be the same for everybody. So hopefully the members that he chose are certainly fair and will be diligent to get this process moving.
Ammons will be allowed to testify in her defense at those hearings, and when they do happen, those hearings will be open to the public. The race to be Illinois' next governor is officially a 3-way race. On Tuesday, independent candidate Colin Corbett celebrated his certification for the November ballot. This came after a weeks-long Republican challenge threatened to end his campaign. It all started back in May after former Republican political strategist Colin Corbett announced his independent campaign for governor. The Darren Bailey campaign challenged his filing, saying he didn't gather the 25,000 signatures necessary to qualify. But a review by the State Board of Elections found Corbett actually had 2,000 more signatures than he needed. The complaint was officially dropped at Tuesday's ISBE meeting, and he says he can now turn his focus to running his campaign.
I know you're used to voting red or blue, R or D, or maybe just not voting at all because you're frustrated. But this is our chance to look at the political system and say, is this working? Because right now, a vast majority of Americans don't vote. They don't participate in the process because they admit that this isn't working for them.
Independent candidates for governor are considered a rarity in Illinois. In the last 86 years, only 3 independent candidates have qualified for the ballot. Speaking of Darren Bailey, the GOP's contender is coming out against a tracking tool used by law enforcement. Flock Safety operates license plate reader cameras in thousands of communities across the country, including here in central Illinois. Recently, some cities have canceled contracts with Flock because they say ICE can access the data for immigrant enforcement operations. Bailey says while he's pro-law enforcement, he's against any mass surveillance system. He says in a free country, the government shouldn't be tracking the daily movements of law-abiding citizens without suspicion or a warrant. After 2 weeks of speculation, disgraced Plainfield Representative Harry Benton is finally withdrawing his name from the November ballot. The move comes just a few weeks after House Speaker Chris Welch told Benton resign or be expelled. But what Benton did to earn that rebuke is still a mystery. Benton's behavior was investigated by the Office of the Legislative Inspector General, and that investigation found, quote, outrageous and unethical behavior. When asked what that behavior was or if the report would ever be released, Speaker Welch responded he was not sure if the LIG had the authority to release the Benton report. In other election news, new voter ID cards are on the way for some in Macon County. The county clerk's office says they've started mailing new IDs to those whose polling locations have changed. One location in Warrensburg and another in Decatur at the Housing Authority are closing because there aren't enough election judges. The Glad Tidings Church in Decatur is also closing because the building is being sold. When you get your new card, make sure to verify all your information and to make sure it's correct before the election. Now to Sangamon County, where the county clerk is sharing new details about a 2024 voter data security incident. 15 counties were involved, including some here in central Illinois, like Sangamon County, Champaign, and Effingham counties. The county clerk says there is no evidence that Sangamon County's election systems or privilege system accounts were accessed or compromised. Now, all registered voters will receive letters with details about the incident as required by the Illinois Attorney General. This letter is just a courtesy and does not mean that your information was breached. High costs for energy are causing headaches for Illinois families, but a new law is hoping to change that. After the break, we hear more about the bills, getting the governor's signature, and what it could mean for your monthly power bill.
From the Illinois State Capitol Rotunda, Alex Whitney is asking the tough questions. This is Capitol Connection.
Two new bills have been signed into law here in Illinois. One of them makes your energy bills even more affordable. That bill expands the discount program for low-income electric and gas customers. Eligibility for the federally funded Low-Income Home Energy Assistance Program, or LIHEAP, has gone up to 300% at or below the poverty level. Previously, it was at 200%. The Champaign County Regional Planning Commission serves about 8,000 homes and helps around 20,000 people. They say families would have to pay up to 30% of their income towards utilities if they didn't have these discounts.
We're ensuring that particularly seniors that are on fixed income, that we're able to serve them as well so that they can afford the utilities. So this is a positive thing. It means that we will be able to serve more households here in Champaign, as well as throughout the state of Illinois.
He says his office was involved in getting the bill to the governor's desk. The other legislation signed into law helps you understand those extra charges and fees on your energy bill. It requires the state to publish a report detailing all of the charges, what laws or agencies mandate them, and which programs or services they support. Governor Pritzker also put his signature on legislation looking to take care of our Illinois National Guard members. The governor signed 3 bills looking to give Guardsmen more support and improve recruitment. SB 3737 requires universities to readmit students following their academic military leave. SB 3818 incentivizes peer-to-peer referrals for recruiting, leveraging the knowledge of current members to facilitate the enlistment of new soldiers. The final bill, SB 3926, moves new breakthrough therapies for veterans to the Department of Public Health to improve suicide prevention. Illinois residents who have been wrongfully convicted and incarcerated can now get more from the state. Governor Pritzker signed that legislation earlier this week. The new law increases the maximum claim amount to $50,000 for each year of wrongful incarceration. It also makes children eligible for compensation if they were unjustly incarcerated as a juvenile.
The compensation for the wrongly imprisoned helps Illinoisans find housing, regain financial stability, and return to their lives and loved ones. The passage of HB 3663 extends that lifeline, making it possible for individuals and their families to get back on their feet after time spent serving an unjust sentence.
You can find more details on requirements for claims, the time frame in which they need to be filed, and more online at our website, WCIA.com. We have a follow-up for you now on Governor Pritzker's recent announcement impacting 11 Illinois counties, including Coles and Effingham, and city officials are quantifying the effects this announcement will have. Governor J.B. Pritzker and the Illinois Department of Revenue are offering temporary tax relief for individuals and businesses affected by severe weather. This is not waiving those taxes completely, but those who apply can have their late penalties and interest stopped, allowing them to focus on getting back on their feet.
That extra time is going to be crucial, especially, if you have a house damaged and you're worried about trying to maybe moved back in, get your all your repairs completed. The furthest thing from your mind is going to be paying some taxes. So this is definitely help a little relief on those residents.
People or businesses interested can email your full name, account number, mailing address, and estimated date that you can file or pay to the state's Department of Revenue. In other Capitol news, a year after seeing their federal support slashed, Planned Parenthood is once again receiving Medicaid funding. The funding was originally cut by provisions in the Big Beautiful Bill, but that provision required an extension after 1 year. Disagreements over the Save America Act have slowed progress in D.C., and Republicans missed the deadline to renew the funding cuts. While advocates celebrated the return of their funding, Planned Parenthood of Illinois reflected on what was lost while funding was in limbo. In a statement, the president and CEO of Planned Parenthood of Illinois said, in quote, "In the years since the Trump administration defunded Planned Parenthood from Medicaid, across the country breast cancer screenings dipped, birth control visits waned, and its testing fell. Thankfully, the state of Illinois stepped in to protect access to care and ensure Planned Parenthood of Illinois could continue serving more than 40% of our patients who rely on Medicaid for services." Now to some news out of Washington. Turning back the clocks could be a thing of the past. This past week, the U.S. House voted to make daylight savings time permanent. The bill earned bipartisan support but still needs to survive the Senate. Kristen Eskow brings us the story from D.C.
The vote in the House was 308 to 117, and this isn't an issue that's dividing lawmakers along party lines. There were supporters and opponents from both sides of the aisle. Americans are now a step closer to never having to change their clocks again.
Twice a year, Americans lose sleep, disrupt their routines, and pay the price for a practice that's outlived its original purpose.
On Tuesday, the House passed a bill to make daylight saving time permanent.
More Little League games, more evenings at local parks, more dinners at outdoor patios and restaurants, more customers walking through the doors of all our mom and pop businesses.
Though the bill has bipartisan support, there's also bipartisan opposition. Roughly 24 Republicans and nearly 100 Democrats voted against it.
I worry that this bill is repeating the mistakes of the past.
Pennsylvania Congresswoman Madeline Dean points to a law passed in the 1970s that made daylight saving time run year-round. It was reversed less than a year later.
The policy was popular until parents realized their children had to travel to school in darkness, armed with flashlights.
President Trump has backed permanent daylight saving time and has said he would sign the bill passed by the House. He wrote about it on Truth Social in May, saying in part, quote, "It's time that people can stop worrying about the clock, not to mention all of the work and money that is spent on this ridiculous twice-yearly production." The bill now heads to the Senate, where it faces an uncertain future. Several senators have raised concerns about the possibility of winter sunrises happening around 9 a.m. or later in some areas. The bill would need 60 votes to pass. Kristen Eskow, News Nation, Washington.
A new man is hoping to take charge of the U.S. Attorney General's office, but acting AG Todd Blanche is facing stiff criticism from both sides of the aisle. Coming up next, we look back at this week's confirmation hearings and the call from Illinois senators to keep Blanche out of the AG's office.
You're watching Capital Connection.
Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche faced tough questions this past week from some members of the Senate Judiciary Committee in his bid to lead the Justice Department in a permanent capacity. Natalie Brand is on Capitol Hill with details from his confirmation hearing.
Do you swear or affirm?
Testifying before the Senate Judiciary Committee Wednesday, Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche made the case why he should be confirmed to the post.
We have the lowest murder rate since 1900. Violent crime arrests are up nearly 114%.
Blanche is a former federal prosecutor and President Trump's former personal attorney. Senators pressed him on his independence from the White House.
Has he ever asked you to do anything illegal?
No.
Would you do it if he asked you?
Absolutely not.
Lawmakers from both parties also grilled Blanche on a shelved proposal for a $1.8 billion fund for people who believe they were unfairly prosecuted by previous administrations.
The Weapons Fund is dead. It's not moving forward.
But Senator John Cornyn of Texas, a Republican whose vote will be key to Blanche's confirmation, still had questions.
The President of the United States, who is a plaintiff in this lawsuit, has not agreed in writing to delete the weaponization fund, and there's no guarantee that he or one of the other plaintiffs might raise that issue by way of a lawsuit.
Blanche also apologized for mistakes the Justice Department made publishing personal information about Jeffrey Epstein's victims with the document release.
I am sorry that in about 1% of the documents, mistakes were made.
With some Epstein survivors at the hearing, lawmakers pressed him to meet with them and release the remaining files. Natalie Brand, CBS News, Capitol Hill.
Those confirmation hearings not sitting well with Illinois Senator Dick Durbin. Durbin criticized Blanche for his role in the January 6th slush fund that was recently blocked by a federal judge, and his part in the Justice Department's many failures surrounding the Epstein investigation.
All he had to say was yes. I asked him repeatedly, would you just meet with the Epstein survivors who are in this room and are asking for their opportunity to speak to our Department of Justice? All he had to say was yes. What we heard from him was gobbledygook about lawyers' rights and lawyers' representation and this and that and the other thing. Just to sit down with these survivors and hear their story.
The Senate is expected to take a vote on Blanche's confirmation sometime within the next month. Federal immigration officials are again under fire after 2 men were killed in the last week during enhanced enforcement operations. The deaths have prompted changes in ICE policy and renewed calls for the agency to be abolished. Lilia Luciano brings us the story.
There's a makeshift memorial in Biddeford, Maine, honoring 25-year-old John Sebastian Duran Guerrero, who was fatally shot by ICE while in his car on Monday. DHS says it was conducting an operation, but law enforcement sources say Guerrero was not the intended target of the agency's surveillance. Now, ICE officers have been told to temporarily suspend most vehicle stops during immigration enforcement operations nationwide.
To me, is an admission that this activity is dangerous.
Border Czar Tom Homan.
And they're going to make sure, is the training sufficient? Did anything go wrong? I'm confident they're going to get back to their policy.
Does anyone here feel safer because this man was shot in cold blood? No!
Here in Maine, residents are voicing their outrage.
People have assembled to protest, to demand accountability, and many of them chanting to abolish ICE.
We're also learning more about Guerrero. His father says he was working 2 jobs to support his 3-year-old daughter and partner.
He's
a good guy, his sister said. He's never had trouble with anybody. Meanwhile, yesterday in Florida, there was a 3rd deadly incident involving ICE in a week. Officials say a person ran away from immigration authorities and was hit by a tractor trailer. And in Houston, Harris County District Attorney Sean Terr is investigating the deadly shooting of 52-year-old Lorenzo Salgado Araujo by ICE last week.
It appears from everything we've seen that either these agents are completely untrained or intentionally putting themselves in situations where they can justify firing into cars.
Illinois congressional representatives are joining those calls for ICE reform. Representative Jesus Chuy Garcia described the agency as out of control and demanded that they make changes to its mask policy and the way that it executes warrants.
People across the country will not trust an agency that has shown time after time that they are lawless. Why do they have to wear masks if no other agents in any police agency does that? Why do they continue to profile people? Why do they deny people their rights?
Garcia went on to say that the agency itself needs to be dismantled and rebuilt again to regain Americans' trust. That frustration over the recent killings picked up in the capital city as well. On Wednesday night, a group of protesters from the group 5051 held a pop-up protest at a local Walmart. There, the group demanded reforms for the agency's controversial practices. The protest comes before a weekend of demonstrations planned in cities across Illinois, including one that did occur on Saturday in Champaign at the county courthouse. Demonstrators say that they'll be gathering around 9:30 to demand justice for those killed since the beginning of enhanced operations in spring of 2025. Well, we hear a lot about the race to the Capitol, but what about a race around the Capitol? After the break, we take a look at the Freedom 250 Grand Prix and the transformations coming to the National Mall. It's a race in D.C., but it isn't about elections. The America 250 celebrations are continuing in August with the Freedom Grand Prix. Rashawn brings us the story.
In just over a month, the sound of roaring engines will echo through the nation's capital.
It'll be an awesome display of American patriotism and raw horsepower.
The original plan was to loop directly around the U.S. Capitol, but it hit a roadblock because federal law prohibits sponsored advertisements on Capitol grounds. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy says that's when the White House stepped in.
We had some people who were creating problems for us on the Hill. Not your team, Mr. President.
Now it will happen around the National Mall, which is usually known for monuments and memorials. Soon it will be transformed into a racetrack for Freedom 250 Grand Prix, adding to the event celebrating the country's 250th birthday. On Monday, President Trump hosted drivers and race officials at the White House, calling the event a unique way to celebrate America's innovation, competition, and patriotism.
They've never been at before, with cars racing more than 190 miles and even higher than that down Pennsylvania Avenue.
Organizers say the event is designed to show both excitement of motorsports and the history of the nation.
I think it's an opportunity to showcase the technology, the speed, the partnerships.
Well, that'll be an interesting event, but that's all we have time for in this Sunday's Capital Connection. Thank you so much for joining me here today. We'll see you here next week.